But even Father Solanus knew that he had to put the chains on temptation, so he never put himself in a position where he was alone with somebody. And you would think here, poor Father Solanus, like
Well, he really wasn't a sex magnet. Let's put it that
no,
way.
right, but nonetheless, he wanted to make sure that
there was no impropriety.
Absolutely.
And this is why I think even open confessionals, go sit on a rock.
That's right.
Away from people. You can whisper. I think there's some beauty in that.
Yes.
And I think it exemplifies for anyone else who might be watching too. They're not knowing what's going on, but they know. But for the grace of God, go I.
Right.
That's
right.
Too.
That's right.
And I think that's a beautiful thing to do. And I think that's one of the better elements when I was looking into the Medjugorje story, that they'd have these people all over the place, these priests, with a sign out there saying what language they spoke, so people could come up to them and just have their confession.
Nice, sure.
There's nothing wrong with that, and but I think that we need to be, and the church itself needs to be more disciplined in what it's doing and how it's going about it, and the candidates they're selecting, and why it is. And I think that a lot of the problems why you get these weak people in a lot of these positions, and they're not all weak. I mean, some of them grow out of it. I agree with that, but we seem to have a problem right now with too many of these coming in.
Yeah, I think we're. I hate to say it. I mean, I think we're so far gone. It's going to require divine intervention in the dismantling of the rot, and however our Lord wants to, whatever He's going to do, because He's always had to do it. That's always been the scenario: is that our Lord bails us out, we screw up in the next 10 minutes. That's who we are, and in spite of that, our Lord continues. But I think it's gone too far. I mean, unless you get the fathers and the mothers rising up and saying, this will stop. You could have 1,000 sheriff's deputies. They can make any difference to them.
Well,
they have to stop this thing. It's sending them on sabbatical.
Well, it was this normal time. So they're saying, well, enough time will go by. You'll all forget about it. You'll all be cool.
That's exactly what
there's nothing to see here, folks. And this is what they tried coming out with. Everyone calm down. We're good. He's okay. There's nothing here. The charges were unsubstantiated. There was a little bit there, but not enough to,
when was that song written? It seems it was written for that particular situation.
That song was released on December 14th, 1979.
Nothing new.
And I remember it was one day before I went home for my Christmas break.
Is that right? You said that these guys are political scientists that formed
the
band?
Two of the members of the band were poli-sci students, and they were very, very educated, although they were heavily coked out in the late 70s, but...
Right.
But this was their generation. Just like the priests who are coming in now are part of a different subculture they're growing up with a lot of these fractured fairy tales in their heads. Yeah. They're being given to them by lower level educators who are woke and defined in those things.
Yeah, it's really.
And so we've got this real.
No, you're right. Even at the highest levels of.
Well, they start off in kindergarten.
Right.
And so you end up getting this band of malformed, ingredients coming into the mix. So they're not going back far enough to try to fix the
helter skelter.
Well, I don't know if I don't know if anyone's going out killing anybody yet, but just wait.
You will.
Because a lot of times when your faith gets so involved and you get so stubborn about things, you will.
I'm surprised we haven't seen that because I've read several books on some of these kids that as altar boys that were subjected. First of all, what they do is they subject them. These priests that are involved in this thing, they'll take them on these little retreats. They'll have pornography that they'll play pornography for the kids. And, of course, if you're 12 or 13 years old, what they end up doing is they start giving them mainly alcohol to loosen them up.
What?
You never read about this? It's in this book.
Well, we haven't gotten there yet, so you're... Yeah. We'll talk about that. But
I'm just saying the way that they groom them.
I know, but I'm just shocked. I think everything you're going to tell me that's in that book.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, because I didn't go that far with my thinking that this was going on. No, I mean,
it's horrifying.
I'm a virgin when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, usually you're more astute. Usually you're more astute than I am in a lot of.
Well, but I didn't dance or swim in those waters.
Well, it's more than just sending the guy on sabbatical, all right? They know there's a serious problem. And I think Larry said they use the church and the Eucharist and the Mass, and then the two police officers to clamp down on them because they want to control.
They weaponize the atmosphere.
Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's not just, that he looked at some little dirty pictures and he got off on it. It goes much deeper.
Yeah. I want to get some more clarity on this. I think we need somebody with a little more experience.
Who you suggest?
Age and wisdom on these things.
Let's call St. Rita.
You think we ought to call St. Rita?
St. Rita will tell us straight up.
Let's find out. Let's see what she's got going. Maybe she can answer here for us. Anyone doesn't know, this is my mother. We call her St. Rita.
Yes.
St. Rita, how are you today?
I'm fine.
Well, I'm in the studio with our good friend Alex.
Okay.
Say hello, Alex.
How are you, Rita?
Hi, Alex.
So, Alex,
How are you, honey?
Alex is waving hello with both hands.
Okay.
So, but we were talking here about the situation that happened in Cincinnati over the weekend with the one man standing up, and I wanted to ask you, St. Rita. I'm going to talk to the viewers here for a little bit. So St. Rita is my mother. She's 99 years old. She's been a practicing Catholic all her life. And I wanted to ask her what her experience has been on some of these things because, I keep talking about how the church has changed, but most people we talk to don't have that experience behind them to really talk specifically to these subjects. You can read about it, but she was there. So we want to ask the source on this. So, Mom, did you ever see anybody in your lifetime ever stand up and object to anything that was going on in the church?
No.
Nobody's ever stood up and objected?
I've never seen it. No. They might have written or something to the pastor, or whatever, but I've never seen the action.
You've never seen anything like that before?
No.
Well,
I take my hat off to them.
To the man for standing up and walking out?
Yeah,
Well, being escorted out by the cops. What do you think about the other people who didn't?
Chicken shit.
Well, that's right. They are, and they've been made that way, I think, by the process. So,
Yeah.
you got a question?
Well, it seems to me, St. Rita, that the extremity of moral degradation in the past 40, 50, 60 years has changed drastically because if you didn't see, right in your face this kind of moral instability and outrage as you were growing up in the church, then we've hit a point where there's an extreme infestation and cancer in our church and in the faith, Christian faith, both Protestant and Catholic, I would suspect, because what did you, when you grew up, what were the priests like? What were the people that were in charge of shepherding our faith and our souls? What kind of people were they?
Did you hear that?
No.
Okay.
About what? No,
Well,
I can't hear you very well.
Yeah, because
Oh,
you're speaking into that. You guys
Okay.
speak into the phone.
Okay.
So put the phone over by your side so you can hear.
Okay.
We're gonna move things around here so Alex can hear and talk at the same time.
Yeah, Rita, the question that I had was that in the past 40, 50, 60 years, what has changed so drastically that there wasn't this out in the open rebellion, that there wasn't this horrific set of circumstances where, priests were looking at pornography, or, of course, during those days, you'd have to almost order it in the mail, but what were the kind of people that were the shepherds, the priests that were in charge of our, the betterment of our faith and our souls and our morals?
Yeah. Well, the priests I knew were all dyed in the wool. it was okay.
Okay, so there
It
was
wasn't so bad. Yeah.
there was a discipline with them.
A bishop was there.
No, there's a discipline with these particular priests. Right.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Would they visit houses and people that were sick in the hospital and at home?
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
I remember Father Havel telling me that he had to visit every parishioner's home once every 3 years. Just so
I
he,
don't know.
well, he said it was part of their practice.
Well, I know my senior silence visited when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I knew he went out to visit homes periodically. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was a common practice clear back in the 30s and 40s.
Right. They did.
They don't do that anymore.
I know. You have to make an appointment or call him or something.
Yeah, I remember Father Havel was at our house like every Thursday.
No.
No, he'd stop by.
Yeah.
I remember when Father Havel would be coming in, we'd see him pull into the driveway, and there'd
But
Mom would say, "Hey, go stop him at the door. Don't let him in. We got to run the vacuum." And she'd get the vacuum cleaner out, and I'd have to stall him at the door and not let him in.
no.
So
Well, I don't call to have them come and see me because I can't understand the guy. You know, he's from Africa or wherever.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's true.
So,
yeah,
you can't literally you can't understand their language.
yeah.
so you're better off not having anybody just have something like that.
How about these younger priests? Larry talked about 5 of them that were ordained. Do you feel that they have the wisdom and the background and the formation, or do they seem to be a little bit naive in terms of what their roles are as priests?
They're not any smarter than a college kid.
Wow.
And less experience, that college kids used to have.
Yeah.
So Rita, what's the key to wisdom? What is the key to somebody that's a true calling, and they very much want to follow our good Lord and do the work that our Lord wants them to do? What's the key for these people to get back to that?
They have to grow up.
Wow.
Wow, that's it. They do.
Well, Larry was saying that the formation, he said, they really need to be in the field 7-8 years before they get ordained so that they have life experience of people suffering and dying and weddings and this and that and the other thing. I mean, they have to have a feel for it.
They need some experience.
So a lot of it is very simple application of investing in them so that they can have the virtues to follow through.
Right. I was
They got to
telling
grow up.
Janine today about the date from hell that I had because I think the kid just didn't know. He was a doctor. Now, he had how many years of college? And he didn't know how to treat a girl.
Oh yeah, he basically didn't know how to deal. This is a doctor when she was a nurse. He asked her out, and then he attacked her. Basically, tried to maul her. Before going home, figuring, okay, now I jump on her. And you don't jump on Saint Rita.
Well, I bet Rita had a rude awakening.
Yeah, but I think the kid just didn't know.
He didn't know. He didn't have a sense of self-confidence.
Well, Larry was saying that a lot of the young men, they don't know how to ask a lady out for a date.
No.
They don't know how to take their time to get to know the person, and they're very, very squeamish and a feeling of inadequacy, and that even our young men are not. You made that comment.
Yeah.
Well, they're feminine.
Yeah.
They're feminine.
What do you mean feminine?
They're feminine. They have more feelings. They're been told to have feelings and not strengths. to deny their strengths.
But I mean, you can have feminine feelings and still have strength.
You can have emotional stability and be a man. I mean, you can be a Grizzly Adams and still hug your kid.
Right.
You know, you can still be a Grizzly Adams and tell
right.
your son each day that he matters and you love
part,
him.
right. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And so the kid grows up knowing he's not alone.
Right.
And his dad, you know, loves him and appreciates him, but expects him to behave. You know, I don't think these guys had that.
Rita, when you were younger, and you thinking about perhaps I would like to get married, in your mind as a young lady, and I know your mom died early, and I know that you had to work extra, you and your sister, and I know that you went through a lot. In your mind, did you always have in your heart a sense that I want to have children, I want to get married, I want to have children?
Yes.
Because a lot of women in these days are thinking more in terms of, I want to have a career. Larry was saying, I want to be famous. I mean, it has nothing to do with I think of my children, I think of my grandchildren. I mean, it's
No. When I got my career and I worked a couple of years, I thought it was time for me to do something important, and to get married and raise a family.
God love you.
So that's what I did.
It was time for me to do something
Important.
important.
Right.
So a lot of this, what you're revealing to us is the answers to these difficult questions are very simple and very natural.
Right.
See, she followed her natural path, which she calls doing something important, called for her to do something that was beyond and bigger than her. And that was to have children and form a family.
Wow.
And find a man who was going to do that with her.
Right.
And she had first instincts were to have to pick the guy.
Geez, you had a doctor that acted like a barbarian. That's too bad.
So she marries a junior accountant instead who's poor and ain't got no money.
And the sad part of it is about that guy. I read him off, and he didn't even know it. I was doing it. He didn't have any idea.
Wow.
Because he didn't know.
Well, that's why men have to get that thing put in their back when they get married.
Well, I think that's just amazing. What was the other topic we were talking about? Was we had the thing in the church, and you were bringing up something about well, we were talking about the malformation of some of these priests. Coming out, they're not ready.
Well,
the maturity level is not there.
You were saying that at one point. I'm thinking it seems too simple, but actually it isn't. According to your mother, that they need to be educated. They need to have the experience so that their hearts are in the right spot.
They don't have any life behind them.
No.
Yeah, right.
They haven't lived life. They haven't suffered. They haven't had pain.
Right.
That lets them know.
Yeah. I think that suffering is. When you lost your mother, how old were you, Rita?
6.
What was it like as a 6-year-old that your mother was gone?
Well, I remember a lot about her and how she treated us.
How did she treat you?
She was always for the kids and always took care of the kids.
Wow.
I mean, she had 13 and 4 died, but each one was important.
Wow.
Each one, when they got to be so old, she gave them a bath and set them on a high chair and set them in front of the honeysuckle vine and took their picture with her camera.
Oh, my God.
But when they got to be 3 years old, we all went to a studio and had a studio picture taken. And so now we have all those pictures in one frame where that's what we did.
God bless you.
But as many as she had, they were all important to do that, to take the time.
Wow.
And that's something.
That's different. Yeah, that's
her mother had a Brownie camera and was really good at photography.
Yeah.
and she took one picture this one time. Had one of the kids, was that Jerome, the rat cat, kid cat rat?
Kid cat rat.
Okay, my uncle Jerome was like this 3-year-old, so he's pulling on a cat's tail while the cat has a rat in its mouth. And so my grandmother, her mom, caught this image of her oldest son holding this cat by the tail, but the cat's got a rat in its mouth.
Wow.
And so she called it Kid Cat Rat.
Nice.
And she entered that photo into and won into contests, because they'd always have these like photo contests.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a award-winning photo. It's an amazing.
Farmer's Guide, yeah.
It's an amazing. Was that in the Farmer's Guide?
Yeah, Prairie Farmer.
Okay, I know it was
Prairie
something. It was a big thing.
You still got that? Have you got that? Prairie Farmer?
Yeah,
We've got the picture.
Do you?
Yeah.
yeah.
So, Rita, St. Rita,
Yeah.
your son and I are involved in some pretty razor edge circumstances and things of the church, and you've heard a lot of the podcast. What wisdom do you need to impart to your son and to me as we try to do something to present to different people that are interested in the kind of topics that we're talking? What do we need to do in order to serve our good Lord better and Our Lady?
I don't know.
Excellent, because neither do we.
I don't know.
I know.
You're beyond me.
Well, Larry and I would rather be playing golf at this point, but
Well, we like to be doing a lot of things, but we just know that this is really, really important to be talking about these things, at least shedding some light on it, at least opening discussion and say that, we need to get the men back into being men, not being afraid of that and to not, be shy about calling things out.
I don't think Frank the Tank would put up with this business if they announced that there was a priest entertaining pornography. Frank the Tank wouldn't put up that, would he?
No.
He would have
Frank
been-
called a spade a spade.
Yeah, he would not have been.
Yeah.
He'd have gone to another parish really quick.
Okay,
Yeah, he'd have been out of there like
instantly.
now. Yeah,
Okay.
Right.
yeah. You see, my father was a Reformed Baptist,
Yep.
so
He became
he
Catholic.
wanted to be a Catholic till he could marry mom.
Absolutely. Who wouldn't?
Well, he wasn't dumb,
Right.
but he knew, and they were a good couple, but he just was not a Catholic, and mom wasn't going to marry anyone who wasn't Catholic.
Absolutely,
Because
yeah.
she had her plan.
Right.
It was thought out.
Yeah.
And it was also formed by her own parents and her father, who
Yeah.
took over after her mother passed away.
Yeah.
So her father was so strong in these same regards, this manliness,
Okay.
that is missing today in so many of our guys. But
So
her
really
father
it's-
was an amazing guy.
So we're looking at an attack on the family of both the father, the mother. This is an attack, and if you can take a man to not be a man,
Right.
you can destroy that family.
Well,
Yeah.
you do, and that's what a lot of the social experiment of the '60s with
Did
getting
that,
the
yeah.
men out of the home and the women marry the government.
Right.
And have your babies with
Taken
any
care
man
of,
you
the
want to,
Medicaid,
just don't have a
right.
man in the home,
Right.
and we'll pay you to stay home and have these kids. And but that doesn't bring any formation. That brings misguided thinking, and it brings immature men into maturity. I mean, immature as far as their manliness goes. Physically, they're mature, but I've always said a woman cannot raise a man. She can raise a mature male, but she doesn't have the instincts and the knowledge to. I mean, heaven knows my dad had to crack my ass a few times.
Yeah. I got attacked in the police department by my father.
Well,
Oh, they decided not to prosecute me because my father already prosecuted me.
so they thought it was enough. Yeah, but there used to be that. But the police used to be able to count on the parents to
Sure.
crack
That's
down
what you're part
and to
of,
take
right.
care of this.
That's
And they
real
saw it again. They said, "We got him next time."
Not to sheriff's deputies in the back of a church.
Yeah. So, what's been going on with you, Mom? You been having a good day?
I think so.
Well, that's good.
What's the name was here? She just left. Kathy just walked in now. She's checking on me.
Okay, that's my younger sister. So her helpmate, she's got a helper that comes in the morning that helps her get going like that. She comes in about 4 hours each day, and then after that, then my mom's on her own, and kind of happy. Then she gets to do whatever the heck she wants.
Right.
So, but
then I do as I please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good, but I got to go down then and show her the podcast videos, and we'll binge watch those a little bit. So, has there been any podcasts so far that you've liked more than any other?
Well, most of the stuff I knew from ahead of time because you're just repeating your experience and all, and Alex too. So,
is there any?
I knew part of that.
Yeah. Is there any story that? Is there any story you remember from our years there that I haven't told yet that you think needs to be shared?
Well, I don't know about your life, but I could tell a lot of stories from my life.
Well, we'll do that. We'll work on those then, because there is a lot, and I think we need to follow through on that. So we'll dial in on those. So now that we know how we can try to work this, and we'll see how it goes. But I think there's a lot to share here. We're going to get on that. But I just know that so many of those events that we had with all those people there and all the different stories that happened, when we had emergencies and just funny things that happened with people there. I mean, you got so many stories that happened in the back that I didn't even see going on between you and Ruby and Carol. I mean,
Ruby is a saint.
Yeah, she is. I always tell people she's more Catholic than the Pope a lot of times.
Right, right.
I have a question, Rita, and I vaguely remember the story that you told about when Larry was, I think he was 5 years old, and he ran out into the street. Can you give a recap on that story, that when he was little? And I think it was in Decatur this happened.
The Decatur, the corner where we both just about got killed.
Yeah.
Tell that story.
Now?
Yeah.
When I was there, or when you were there?
Well,
I'll tell you when I was there.
Mine was first, right?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right. Back.
A long time ahead of me when you were 5, and you were at the Springs when happened to me.
Yeah.
And I was in Decatur at the corner of 2nd and Monroe, and I was going across the street, and I had the red light, but nothing was coming. It was on a Saturday afternoon, and they'd already rolled up the sidewalk, and I thought I could be across the street before anything would come, and I started across the street, and I heard this man say, "Get back, you're going to get hit." And so I jumped back on the curb, and with that, a car came up from the north that I didn't see, speeding, and he had the same light I did, and he was trying to make a right-hand turn right in front of me, and he did, and I thought, oh my golly, I'd have been hit.
Yeah.
I'd have been like a pancake out there in that street.
Wow.
And so, and I stood on the curb, and I thought, where's the guy that warned me? And I wanted to thank him. And so I looked around, and I thought nobody was there yet.
Wow.
It was still there. And so, and I thought, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Now, I'm a nurse, and I always wanted to diagnose and prescribe. So I wanted to find out where that voice came from. He had to be close because he was so plain. So it couldn't have been from across the street.
Could have been maybe your angel, your guardian angel or something.
That would have been too far. And so I couldn't figure out who did it. And so I just thanked whoever warned me, and I went about my business. And so then I thought, well, someday I'm going to tell Larry about that.
Well,
so when I went to tell Larry about it, Larry didn't seem surprised at all. And I thought, you said, well, that's the same corner where I got pushed down.
Oh,
And
it
I
is?
said,
Same corner?
when did you get pushed down?
For-
And you said, when I was 5 years old. Grandma told me not to tell. And and so I said, what happened? So then you told me your story. And I thought, good glory, what's happening on this corner?
Oh, I see how that.
So,
So what was the story about Larry? He was 5, and who was he with?
I'll tell my story. So I was 5 years old, and I had walked uptown with my grandmother, who lived the next block over. And she was babysitting me for the afternoon. We went up to the dime store. And
Oh, I love that story.
yeah,
Oh,
where the old dime stores were. And so I wanted to get marbles. And the dime store we were into didn't have the marbles, but it had what my grandmother wanted. But she was, we finished our shopping there. Then I wanted to get to the store that was on the opposite street corner, had the marbles. And so we're standing there waiting for the light, and I just start going. And with that, I get knocked down to the ground, and I can smell the car going by me right then. I can still smell
that kind.
the smell of those tires on that hot day,
Yeah.
and the oilish
Oh, sure,
smell,
Yeah.
you know, and I can still smell that today. But this car zipped by me, and I tell you, it missed me by just inches.
What do you mean you were knocked down?
I just fell to the ground. I was like pushed
he
down.
said he was pushed down.
I was like pushed down.
Right. Yeah.
No one touched
He
me.
was-
My grandmother wasn't even close to me. I
So
dropped
you
away from
were
her.
forced out.
I was like shoved down to the ground with no one there.
And you remember that? You remember being shoved down.
Oh yeah, I felt like somebody knocked me with a brick.
And so then after the car passed, you got up?
I got up, and grandmother was really angry with me.
Sure.
And she said, "Oh, you okay?" I said, "Yeah, I'm okay," like that. She says, "You shouldn't be doing that." I said, "Well, now I know, yeah."
Right.
No. And she says, "Well, you're okay. Well, don't tell anyone about this, because otherwise you'll never get to stay with me again."
Right.
And so I just never said anything. I was just a dumb kid. All I wanted was my marbles.
Well, sure. Did you get them?
I ended up getting a bag of marbles.
Nice.
Yeah. So, and it took all of like 2 dimes to get it. But I got my marbles, and I was happy. But it was at that same corner. My mother was crossing one way, and I was crossing the opposite way.
Somebody wanted you and your mother dead.
Well, they tried.
Yeah.
And we both came really close
Close.
to being, run over by
It's
automobiles.
remarkable.
Yeah, it was an incredible relation. When she told me, I was like, oh my gosh, because she's telling me, and rather than being just shocked and scared, I was like, oh my gosh, that's the same corner where I got it.
Okay.
As a kid.
Well,
Wow.
that was years apart.
40 years apart. They've been like 40 years difference.
Is it?
Yeah.
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 But just innocuous. You never think of anything, but that's how it goes. And I think we both had our guardian angels there that day.
Have to.
Maybe he's just standing at that corner waiting for us. I don't know.
Right,
but,
right. No, you'd have to, yeah.
But,
Yeah, especially anything like that. Where's the guy that, where's the guy that told me to get back? Not there.
yeah, no one around.
I've heard that. I've heard stories like that with people that miraculously. I almost got killed in 2003 when I was heading out to the Philippines, but that's another story another time.
Okay. Well, that sounds great, Mom. Thank you so much. I think we're going to call it a short here. I don't know if Kathy's still there with you. But we're going to move on. But I think what we're going to do is we're going to come back in our next session. I think there's a few stories also about with you growing up and things like that. I think we'd like to go back into with
Yes.
you, and we'll cover some more of those then next time. So, but I think what we got here was your take on a hot subject right now, which I'm glad that with your experience agrees with what our thinking is right now, which is this conservative, people, these priests just need to grow up a
That's
bit,
all.
And I think nowadays with all the technology and all the influences, it's probably difficult for them to grow up more because there's too many challenges. And so we got a different mindset going on that we got to be aware of and, try to tune into. So any advice for these young guys?
Grow up.
Grow up. All right.
That's right. She's right.
Live meaningfully.
Pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, pay attention, live with meaning. So
Love you, St. Rita.
Okay, thank you.
thanks,
Thank you.
Mom. Love you. Okay. You take care.
Go.
We'll call you later. All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Wow.
Yeah, not that difficult.
Can you believe that? Grow up.
Right. Imagine that. Simple.
Yeah, just that's simple to get it out there like that. But it's not rocket science.
No.
It's just the meaning of life and the responsibility that goes with the positions. And so it's really kind of saddening.
If your mother can do it, losing her mother at the age of 6, and with 13 children losing 4 of the kids, but 13, you still got 9.
There are
10.
nine siblings.
If St. Rita can rise to the occasion of being a person, a solid lady, and a good-hearted person, good mother, and to speak so highly and loving towards her mother, listen, we can do it. If she can do it, the question is whether or not, we want to apply and suffer with it and get up and go to work on it. And if we don't, then we just become lazy, sort of drifting.
Well, ne'er-do-wells, we haven't really, pushed ourselves to the capacity. What, with the gifts that we've been given, we need to be using them. This is why I say you got to do something. You got to make things.
Right.
Let God inspire you to make things. God builds, the devil destroys.
Right.